The sharks were gone. It started on a Tuesday morning, off the jagged coast of Widow's Cove, a sleepy fishing town nestled between cliffs and restless waves. The fishermen noticed it first. Nets that once strained under the thrashing weight of makos and hammerheads now came up empty, tangled with nothing but seaweed and the occasional frightened crab. By noon, the beachgoers whispered about it: no dorsal fins slicing through the surf, no shadows lurking beneath the swells. The ocean, usually a symphony of life and danger, had fallen eerily silent. At first, no one panicked. Sharks were unpredictable, maybe they'd migrated, or a storm had driven them deeper. But by dusk, the unease crept in. Old Man Carver, a grizzled fisherman with salt-crusted hands, stood on the pier, squinting at the horizon. "They're scared," he muttered to no one in particular. "Something's got 'em spooked." His words hung in the air, heavy as the fog rolling in. He'd seen sharks ride out hurricanes, feast through oil spills, even swarm after blood in the water. But scared? That was new. The next day, the evidence washed ashore. A juvenile great white, barely 10 feet long, lay sprawled on the sand, its body mangled. Its flank was sliced open with a precision no predator could manage, its gut spilling out in a neat, almost surgical line. The crowd that gathered, tourists, locals, a few kids poking it with sticks, murmured in confusion. "What does that?" a woman asked, clutching her toddler's hand. No one had an answer. By week's end, dozens more carcasses littered the coast, bull sharks, tigers, even a massive thresher, all torn apart with the same chilling exactness. The sharks weren't just gone, they were being hunted. Panic bloomed slowly, then all at once. Scientists arrived with clipboards and cameras, spouting theories: disease, pollution, a rogue predator. But the townsfolk of Widow's Cove knew better. They felt it in the air, a prickling wrongness. The sharks, lords of the sea, weren't fleeing. They were being erased. And no one could say why. It was a fisherman named Tommy Reese who saw them first. 3 weeks after the disappearances began, he was out on his skiff at midnight, chasing a rumor of tuna schools. The sea was glassy, the moon a thin crescent overhead, when his sonar pinged, something big, moving fast. He leaned over the rail, expecting a whale or a lost shark, when the water erupted. They rose like specters, tall, angular figures, their bodies shimmering like molten steel. Their limbs were long and segmented, ending in claws that glowed faintly blue, and their heads bore no faces, only twin violet lights where eyes should be. Tommy froze as one of them surfaced fully, dragging a thrashing mako shark by its tail. The creature's claws hummed, a low, electric buzz, and with a single swipe, it cleaved the shark in two, its blood staining the water black. The alien dropped the corpse and turned its glowing gaze toward Tommy's boat. He didn't wait to see more. Gunning the engine, he sped back to shore, babbling into his radio. By morning, his story spread like wildfire. The townsfolk laughed it off at first. Tommy was known for tall tales and cheap whiskey, but then the footage leaked. A shaky video from his deck cam, uploaded by his nephew to X, showed the glowing figures, the butchered shark, the undeniable truth. Aliens. The word felt absurd, yet there they were. The world watched in stunned silence as more sightings poured in. Off Australia, a reef shark was yanked from the water by a metallic claw. In the Atlantic, a pod of orcas scattered as alien shapes emerged from the depths. The sharks fought back, teeth snapping, tails thrashing, but they were no match. The beings moved with cold efficiency, dissecting their prey and vanishing beneath the waves. Scientists scrambled for answers, governments issued vague statements, but one question burned in everyone's mind: why the sharks? To understand why, we must go back, 3 months before the silence, to a night of howling wind and crashing waves. Eleanor Grayson stood on the cliffs of Widow's Cove, her gray hair whipping in the storm, her eyes red with grief. In her hands, she clutched a crumpled photo, her husband, Michael, laughing with their 2 children, Sarah and little Ben, on a sunlit beach. They were gone now, all of them, taken by the sea she'd once loved. It had happened on a family fishing trip, a rare day of calm waters and clear skies. They'd been trolling off the reef when the sharks came. Not 1, not 2, but a dozen, great whites, driven into a frenzy by some unseen trigger. The boat capsized in seconds. Michael fought to save the kids, but the water turned red. Eleanor, clinging to a piece of wreckage, watched helplessly as her family was torn apart, their screams swallowed by the waves. She washed ashore alone, broken, the sole survivor of a nightmare no one could explain. That night on the cliff, the pain erupted. She fell to her knees, the photo slipping from her fingers, and screamed into the storm. "Take them," she wailed, her voice raw and ragged. "Take the monsters that stole my world. I curse them, every last one. Let them suffer like I do." The wind carried her words out to sea, and the ocean seemed to shudder in response. Lightning cracked, illuminating her silhouette, and then she collapsed, sobbing, as the rain washed her tears into the earth. She didn't know it then, but something heard her. Something far beyond the stars. When the sharks vanished, Widow's Cove threw a party. The disappearances were a mystery, but to the townsfolk, they were a gift. Fishermen hauled in record catches without fear of shredded nets. Tourists flocked to the beaches, no longer haunted by Jaws-inspired dread. Even the scientists, still puzzling over the carcasses, couldn't dampen the mood. "Maybe it's a natural correction," one said on TV, adjusting his glasses. "The ecosystem adapting." No one cared about the why, they were just glad the sharks were gone. Eleanor didn't join the celebration. She sat alone in her cliffside cottage, staring at the ocean that had betrayed her. The townsfolk whispered about her, how she hadn't smiled since the accident, how her curse had worked. They didn't believe it, not really, but they avoided her all the same. She didn't care. The silence of the sea was her vindication, her revenge. Then came Tommy's video, and the rejoicing stopped. The aliens were real, and they weren't stopping with the sharks. Orcas vanished next, then crocodiles from coastal swamps. A fishing trawler went silent off Maine, its crew found days later, gutted, their bodies marked with those same precise wounds. The pattern emerged: carnivores. Predators. Anything that hunted, anything that killed. The aliens were purging them all. Humanity's joy turned to dread. News anchors stammered through reports of glowing figures spotted inland, wolves disappearing from forests, lions from savannas. A grainy clip from Brazil showed one of the beings slicing through a jaguar with a beam of light. The realization hit like a tidal wave: humans, with their history of war and slaughter, were carnivores too. The aliens weren't saviors. They were executioners. The first human attack came on a moonless night. A coastal village in Portugal, 50 souls, woke to that humming sound, the same Tommy had described. By morning, the village was a graveyard, bodies strewn across the sand, marked with alien precision. The world erupted in chaos. Militaries mobilized, cities locked down, but the aliens struck without pattern, swift, silent, unstoppable. Eleanor saw it happen. From her cliff, she watched as a glowing figure emerged from the waves, dragging a bull shark ashore. It dissected the creature, then turned its violet gaze upward, toward her town. She hid, heart pounding, as more of them rose, their claws humming. Her curse, her cry, had summoned them. Guilt gnawed at her, but there was no time for regret. The aliens were here, and they weren't leaving. Hope came from the sea itself. Off Japan, a viral video showed a tiger shark lunging at an alien, dragging it underwater. In the Pacific, a giant squid, its existence debated for centuries, wrapped its tentacles around a glowing craft and pulled it into the abyss. The carnivores, battered but unbroken, were fighting back. They didn't understand the aliens, didn't care. Instinct drove them: survive or die. Dr. Lena Patel, a marine biologist turned resistance leader, saw the pattern. "They're like us," she said in a broadcast that reached millions. "The sharks, the squid, they're predators, but they're not evil. They're fighting for their lives. We can too." Her team devised a plan: use sonar to communicate with the aquatic carnivores, unite them with human forces. It was insane, but it was all they had. The first test came off Widow's Cove. Eleanor, pulled from her isolation by Dr. Patel, stood on a naval destroyer, her hands trembling as she held the sonar controls. "I started this," she said, voice hoarse. "I'll help end it." The signal pulsed into the deep, a call to arms. Minutes later, the water churned. Sharks surfaced, great whites, hammerheads, makos, their scars testament to battles with the aliens. Then a kraken rose, its tentacles spanning the horizon, eyes glinting with primal fury. The humans held their breath. These were the monsters of their nightmares, yet here they were, answering the call. A tense truce formed, forged in shared desperation. Across the globe, similar alliances emerged, piranhas swarming in rivers, orcas ramming alien crafts. The carnivores didn't trust humanity, and humanity didn't trust them, but they had a common enemy. The aliens struck harder. Warships descended from the sky, their beams carving through sea and land. Cities burned, fleets sank, but the coalition fought on. A megalodon, resurrected from extinction's myth, crushed an alien vessel in its jaws. Krakens tore through metal hulls, while human jets strafed the invaders. Blood, human, beast, alien, stained the water red. The climax came under a sky ablaze with alien fire. The mothership, a hulking prism of light, hovered over the Atlantic, directing the purge. Eleanor, now a figurehead of the resistance, stood on the destroyer's deck, broadcasting the sonar signal worldwide. "We fight as one," she declared, her voice steady despite the chaos, "or we die alone." The battle was apocalyptic. Alien beams vaporized ships, but the sharks struck from below, tearing at submerged crafts. Krakens grappled with warships, their roars shaking the air. Humans launched missiles, drones, everything they had. The mothership retaliated, its core glowing brighter, but the alliance pressed on. A great white leapt, dragging an alien into the deep. A piranha swarm overwhelmed another. Slowly, impossibly, the tide turned. The killing blow came from the megalodon. Rising from the depths, it slammed into the mothership's hull, teeth sinking into alien metal. The krakens joined, tentacles coiling, pulling. Human missiles struck the breach, and with a deafening roar, the mothership crashed into the sea, its light extinguished. When the sun rose, the survivors gathered on Widow's Cove shore. Eleanor stood among them, human and beast, watching the waves. A shark fin broke the surface, and she didn't flinch. Her curse had started it, but their unity had ended it. The aliens were gone, their purge undone. The ocean's carnivores, once her enemy, were now her kin. Humanity rebuilt, wary but wiser. The sharks returned to their hunt, the krakens to their depths. A fragile peace held, born of blood and respect. Eleanor smiled, a faint curve of lips, and whispered to the sea, "We're even now."